So over the years, as a promoter and as a wrestler, I worked with lots of different talent over time, and you know, of course, they would send you their promotional photo when they wanted to get booked, and so you'd have lots of different different photos, and there's some that I just collected myself over the years. This one is a very interesting one. It was shot by Winnipeg's Terry Mahalik, and there's a very young Brian Pillman when he was a Stampede Wrestling Tag Team Champion with Bruce Hart as part of Bad Company was their tag team name. And of course, it's originally marked Canadian Championship Wrestling, which was Terry Mahalik's trade name, copyrighted in 1988. Here's one of Moose Morowski. This one, Moose was also a champion in Stampede. I believe this is the Stampede North American title. You can see the Canada flag and the US flag on the top of the belt. And Moose was a well-traveled guy, traveled more than 40 years internationally, Japan, Germany, Austria, all over the world. And he was actually the first man acknowledged in Stan Hansen's WWE Hall of Fame acceptance speech. He said, "Thank you to Moose Morowski for teaching me the trade." The Bushwhackers, this was a promotional photo, and it's signed, but it's one of those professionally lithoed images. Here's a great one that Leo Burke had done, Canadian legend Leo Burke, when he was doing some autograph tours in 2009, where he had a rookie picture of himself here in the top corner from 1966, a picture from his prime when he was Stampede North American Champion, and then a picture of him presently from 2009. Few other photos in here that are more current. Of course, you may be familiar with the Bollywood Boys, who have just come up through NXT and now recently debuted on SmackDown Live. Here's one of the early promo photos of Harv Sira. Here's another one, the Bollywood Harv Sira. He was Bollywood long before they made their WWE debut. This one here is a printed photo. I believe it's only available at the Alberta Provincial Archives. That's where I got it from. I was a guest speaker at one of their events, and they gave me this printed photo. This is a Stampede Wrestling photo, I would guess from about 1979. So you see one of the Cuban assassins here. You can recognize their khaki pants. But he's about to slam Bret the Hitman Hart, a very young Bret Hart. And over here in the corner you can see his brother Keith Hart. So pretty vintage photo, rare from the Stampede Wrestling. Yeah, so this is a really interesting item, because before they had computer generated graphics for the TV show, Stampede Wrestling would have this like hand created card, and they would just shoot the TV camera at it, and it would tell you the next segment that was coming up on Stampede Wrestling. So this card in particular is from about 1974. Talking about the main event coming up on the television show. So Leo Burke versus Moose Morowski, and we've got it autographed here by Leo. And then Magnificent Zulu versus Mr. Sakurada. Sakurada was one of the Japanese wrestlers that trained Bret Hart. So pretty interesting, and of course they're promoting that you know, the NWA World Champion Harley Race is coming to town in a few weeks, and one of these guys is going to face the World Champion. So over my career, I used to collect a lot of memorabilia, and I used to like to collect the event posters. And so on this one, you see a lot of world-class legends. This is from 2001 in the Maritimes. And one guy I'd like to point out there is the current NXT champion, Bobby Roode, when he was the Real Action Wrestling champion as a member of the Cardinal Sinners with Cowboy Mike Hughes and Brody Steele, who is now an international star all over. Joe Legend was touring that year, Chi-Chi Cruz, Massive Damage, Eddie Watts, Gary Williams. A pretty stellar lineup of guys they had touring that summer. And we've got stuff even closer to home. Tony Condello, one of his most famous tours is the Ice Road Tours of Northern Manitoba, which he called Wrestling with the North after he had a documentarian come up there, Andrew Lee, and take that tour with him. And this was the name of the documentary that's appeared on CBC television. But you know, the guys that have gone up there, it's a who's who. So Edge, Scott Norton, Christian, Lance Storm, so many guys. And this particular year, I believe this was 2008, two guys that you see on the poster are Gerv Sierra and Harv Sierra, who are now in SmackDown Live's Singh brothers, formerly the Bollywood Boys of NXT. WWF Action Figures, the LJNs from the 80s.
And is that one? That one's like a Canadian exclusive, is it not?
I think. Well, the ones that actually had the photo were from the later series. The original ones were these hand drawn ones. So you've got like Hercules Hernandez and Classy Freddie Blassie, and they used to come rolled up in the bottom of the action figure. So they would have this little blue bar at the bottom of the package that said "exclusive inside," a superstar poster. And so you've got some of these later series ones where it's a photo, and a lot of them where it's this original illustration. So they had the singles ones, and then for the tag team sets, it was a larger poster that featured both of the wrestlers. So there's the Killer Bees, which is kind of an interesting one because they're shown with belts and they never held the WWF tag team titles. The Hart Foundation. Interesting that they were illustrated in red before they went to their trademark pink and black. And of course, the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid. Moves, the glass has since disappeared. But this is an original program from Winnipeg, January 27th, 1960. The promoter was Alex Turk at that time. And this is an autographed program by the Canadian legend Whipper Billy Watson. And you can see the original blue ink from the autograph. The Condello tour. And I'm going to point this out. He'll be mad that I've done this, but he had a tour going on in 1999, and he went, and one of his sponsors said, well, we'll sponsor you some dollars, but we'll actually do your t-shirts for you. And so he did this t-shirt, A. Condello Presents Professional Wrestling, but professional is spelled wrong. Yeah, that was a 2-week tour of Northern Ontario. Team Impact. It's a retro Winnipeg one. Apparently nobody does it better.
Your old tag team partner, Robbie Royce?
My old tag team partner, Robbie Royce, yeah. Don Callis, who we remember from the WWE and TNA and ECW, had his own promotion in Winnipeg for a while called No Holds Barred Wrestling. A t-shirt from that. Their catchphrase was "No spectators, just witnesses." There's a little company, a former Winnipeg guy, Crash Crimson, went to Saskatchewan with Massive Damage, and they started their own company called Pro Outlaw Wrestling, where outlaws become legends. They ran for a couple of years and had some pretty good tours and some good shows.
Anybody become legends?
Well, they had some legends there. Jerry Lynn and Sabu made a few appearances there. Massive Damage was only with the company for a short while, and then he left, went to Edmonton and started Monster Pro Wrestling, which is still active today. Here's one you'll remember. This one's from about the year 2000. Bobby J's Top Rope Championship Wrestling. I think Bobby J liked the t-shirt because his catchphrase was, "I like it on top." He liked to wear that to the local bars. Here's one. I don't even know how I got this shirt because I was never part of the organization. This was Premier Championship Wrestling. Mike Davidson had been the booker for Bobby J and Top Rope Championship Wrestling, and had decided he was going to go his own way and start his own empire. And PCW as a promotion is still active today, though Mike wasn't with it for that very long. And They were the Industry of Cool. And then, as I said, you would sometimes trade shirts with different guys. This was a fellow out of Calgary, Mad Dog McFly. He did some tours internationally and actually had a tryout for WCW in about 2001 when WCW came to Winnipeg. On the West Coast, there was a company called ECCW, and for a while they were taping television, and the brand of their television show was called ECCW Insanity. And I don't know if there's very many of these t-shirts around.
Any notables from that promotion?
ECCW was a starting point for a lot of guys. So Kyle O'Reilly got his start there in ECCW. The Bollywood Boys got their start. I spent a few years there. Former NWA World Women's Champion Madison wrestled for ECCW. Juggernaut was a big 400-pounder. Did really great things in Japan. So a lot of really good talent came out of ECCW and went all around the world. This one was a short-lived promotion in Regina, about 1997, hardcore wrestling. They had a backer, and they created a bit of a stir for themselves all over Saskatchewan. They were hardcore to the bone, and a lot of young guys out of there. Probably their most successful alumni was Massive Damage. He got his start there and then has gone on to wrestle and promote for the past 20 years.
Did we get a young Wavell Star from that promotion?
Wavell Star was also, that was one of his earliest appearances, was hardcore wrestling. Here is a World Championship Wrestling shirt from the Four Horsemen. This was about the era that Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko were members of the Horsemen. So that's just kind of an interesting find. Here's a later version of the Top Rope Championship Wrestling shirt. I think this one was from about 2002.
Can you tell us some notables from Top Rope Championship Wrestling?
Top Rope, it was an interesting time for Winnipeg because there had been a lot of action in the indies, but Bobby J was running probably one community club and one nightclub a week at least. Sometimes he'd have 2 or 3 matches a week. So you had guys like Donnie DiCaprio, who's since gone on to MMA, as Jason Geiger. Shane Madison got his start in Top Rope. Rob Stardom, who went on to do some wrestling and promoting. A lot of guys came through there at that time. Mentolo was very active in Top Rope. Zach Mercury, TJ Bratt got his start there as well.
How about a guy from New Japan Pro Wrestling?
Kenny Omega, of course. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why he wasn't at the top of the list. Kenny Omega had his great start there, and often the early part of his career gets overlooked. So he'll mention that he started in Winnipeg with Bobby J, and then it kind of skips ahead a few years, and they don't really say anything else other than to say that the scene, people on the scene at that time were very enthusiastic, and that's about all that he ever says.